This is Guardian Radio, your station for up-to-the-minute news, intelligent, interactive, and engaging conversation. 96.9 FM. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
You have to be strong in today's world. Keep your focus and up. You believe in how to achieve all your dreams. Keep moving forward. Never accept less than who you are. Live your best life. Be strong and free. It's the Hit Back with Natasha Black. It's the Hit Back.
The Hit Back with Natasha Black is sponsored by the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, BTC, J.S. Johnson, and the Water and Sewage Department.
With Natasha Black.
Good afternoon, Bahamas, and welcome to the Hit Back. I'm your host, Natasha Black. It's a beautiful day here in the 242. I hope that everyone is doing well, that you are taking care of yourself, that you are living your best life today. I hope that we are really just, getting set for a great holiday weekend, one where we stay safe, where we're not being risky, limit our interactions, but at the same time, just enjoy yourself and enjoy your weekend as best as you can. We are in some increasingly interesting times, y'all. Today, I've got a full show for you today. I'm excited. I've got Kimsley Ferguson, President of the Bahamas Public Service Union. The Bahamas Public Service. Yep, that was it. Having a moment. And also Dr. Niambi Hall Dean will be joining us, or Hall Campbell Dean will be joining us on the show as well, as we talk about emancipation, the Black emancipation movement of the Bahamas. And I don't know if we consider that as a movement, that we as Bahamians had a movement, that we ourselves have gone through phases of activism to get to this point. And I think it's important that we always revisit that history to remind us of who we were, who we are today, but better yet, who we can be. And so, there's so much history. And as I learn it, I've grown to appreciate. And I hope that the people of Fox Hill even understand and are reminded of how wonderful, how impactful, how powerful that settlement is. Gambia, listen, I am loving Bahamian history as I learn it more, not from school. I've not learned, Bahamian history was not what I learned in school. I learned about the Aztecs, the Incas, the Mayans, and their feats of technology and their way. When we finally did learn, we learned about Columbus and his discovery of us, but the Arawaks to some degree. And but I thank God there was a gentleman, a teacher, I think his name was Mr. Saunders at R.M. Bailey, who taught us civics. And I remember that was the first time I'd heard about Doris Johnson. And that was in grade 11. And that's what shook me, was that, hold on, there's a movement by women. So Bahamian history is a wonderful thing that gives us so much pride. And, as we head on to a holiday, which is my mother's birthday, she'll be turning 75. Shout out and happy birthday to my wonderful mom, Anita. That we, continue to look in the mirror and realize that we are warriors, man, that we are more than conquerors, that we are, as a people, we are filled with pride because we should be proud of ourselves. And when we are held hostage or disappointed, or when our expectations come lower than expected, don't let anyone dumb you down to believe that adequate is sufficient, that inadequate is acceptable, that the status quo is our standard, that begging on our knees for commerce is the level of acceptability, that this is the way you do business. Ladies and gentlemen, our forefathers didn't fight for majority rule, for the majority of us to live in poverty. Our forefathers didn't fight for emancipation and freedom of themselves so that the majority of us could be in bondage economically. That freedom that they march for is incomplete. That process is incomplete. Inadequacy should never be the standard for a Bahamian, because we know what it is to be the best at something. Tourism isn't the shackle. The shackle is that they made us believe that tourism was it. We excelled at tourism. We were the standard of tourism. But instead of being the leaders of tourism in that we taught the world, we became the leaders of service. So all we were called and deemed good to do, or enough well off to be, were the maids, not the hotel owners, the croupiers. Some of us got really good jobs in tourism, so we felt that we had arrived, but then there was still many who were struggling. Then they started to take our tips, the excess, the extra that made you feel as if you had. My father built his apartment buildings off of tips as a waiter. 20 years as a waiter and captain, 30 years as a waiter and captain between, I don't know what the hotel was, but I know Crystal Palace, right? And whatever else it was. But now we are slaves to it. We've never moved from leading or doing to leading. And every time these holidays come, and I want y'all to hear me and believe me when I say this, it is important for the structure and the economic system that prevails, that keeps us labor and our owners. Even when they give us piecemeal incentives, trust me when I tell you there's a ceiling. Trust me when I tell you there's a point in your climb where who you know matters. When what you give up and sell out to becomes the next step to your true economic freedom. But it cannot be freedom if you're owed a debt, if someone owns you. So when they talk about, we're empowering people with businesses, I assure you there's a level when you reach business that you'll see that only a few people are allowed in that space. Then you meet the brothers and the sisters who show off in their cars, in their house, show off in their townhome, happy they live out east, out deep west, very proud of their accomplishments, but they ain't gonna tell you how close they are under the arms of people who actually own this country. True economic freedom requires a change in the economic system. And an economic system change requires for us to wake up and be woke and realize that tourism is sailing and failing in this country. Why is it failing? You say, Naja, it can't be failing. It is fickle. Tourism isn't ours. We're starting to shift it. If you're a homeowner, but we can't own homes. The majority of us can't afford to get the loan. Try and get the second home if you got a first one. Watch what the bank does to you. Try to get the bus. Watch how you find out how many plates are owned by others and rented out. Watch when you try to actually move forward. Listen, this pandemic and the way it has been handled is the same way. There's a few people getting rich in this country, and it's off of health. Our poor health has made a few people exceedingly wealthy. Tell me why Princess Margaret Hospital today has yet to give audits on the monies that we keep putting in the system. Tell me why we have Doctors Hospital that is exceedingly doing well and growing and expanding. But PMH can never get out of his own way. I have health insurance. I'm one of the fortunate ones. It's not the best health insurance, but I've used my health insurance at PMH. But they don't give you good service and good quality. So you know what? The next time I'll go somewhere else. Make the product better and people will spend on it, spend with it. It's as if there's a sabotage going on. Healthcare ain't free, ladies and gentlemen, and free healthcare is a myth and a lie. We cannot afford to do free healthcare. So we can't afford to do free healthcare. Then we must create a system that is better functioning. Today, how do we do accounting in the hospital if there's no billing? What is coding and billing? Only a few people are getting wealthy. Why is it that when we talk about PCR tests, it ain't free? Today, a parent was in Bimini pleading for someone to help them get a PCR test done on Bimini. for their child who has to have a visa interview, a student visa interview in New Providence, could not get home, still can't get home, still can't get to New Providence. You're in your own country, but tourists can come here, land in country without a PCR test, but Bahamians can't travel into Ireland without a PCR test. Oh, well, no, you know, Nahaja, the tourists are vaccinated. Ladies and gentlemen, y'all talking about the tourists are vaccinated, but the tourists can still, any vaccinated person, more so than a person who's unvaccinated. And why I say more so, because we're emboldened at being vaccinated, not symptomatic or asymptomatic, traveling space to space, shedding tons of this virus. But if I got a cold or a cough, I know for sure to stay home, but I can't even afford the test. So this is ridiculous to me. Bahamians ain't working. Not everybody making this money. People are deciding between their health and income. The government is talking about, oh, you know, get vaccinated. But then the only place that's giving vaccines today, cut it to 20%. 20%. And the same word, this insidious, interesting word, was used by Brent Simonet today, said brutal. We have to be brutal. Rupert Roberts said the same word, brutal, when he was talking about the application of these rules that need to happen with COVID, that the government needs to be brutal. Now Brent Simonet is using the same word. You can tell some folks sitting around the same table, whilst you and I can't sit to our table with a group of 5 unless we vaccinated. Huh? We must be the king and queen conks of the whole Caribbean. But this is where we are. A parent can't get to New Providence for a student visa, a child to get a student visa in Bimini. They're all out of PCR tests. We're talking about vaccines. Can you just get the guests to take a PCR test? Something else I saw before I bring on my guest in this segment. So something else that I saw, ladies and gentlemen, which really shook me, but it didn't shake me because I didn't know. It shook me because I knew about it, but then there's so many times I get photos, but this one just got me. So I don't know if you saw on social media, I posted it on my page, but there's a photo circulating. It shows LPIA, Lyndon Pilning and International Airport. The airport is loaded with tourists. It is an optimistic and a very scary sight. Optimistic because you see tourism is brimming. This is wonderful. But you remember yesterday when I talked about the fact that you want to see folks come in, but at the same time, you know that there's stuff coming in with them. What are we doing? How do we, determine this? And ladies and gentlemen, here's the thing. This is the truth. Every other country, major country, they decided that they were going to have to take the brutal measure of closing their borders, right? The brutal measure. Now that's what I use, the brutal measure of closing their borders. Because there's a photo of LPIA with hundreds of people, black, white, brown, doesn't matter, in queue, right? In queue. And they're in queue, some without their masks pulled up. This was for Saturday. So if you saw the photo, it's a photo on Saturday. 4,953 persons traveled in LPIA. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm learning now that, and there's so much here. Y'all don't even know how much things, it is amazing to me. We have where all our hospitals are at max capacity. I found out last night someone who was a part of our family passed away, senior citizen, was in hospital from July 10th, passed away last night from COVID. This is where my frustration lies. My frustration lies in the fact that we have this conversation or this monologue about you care for Bahamians. You're quoting scripture, right? We're quoting deep scripture. You go into the Samaritan and all of this stuff. You're deep. And my whole thing is, what are we trading? How can commerce really happen? How can a country really make money if your people are falling out sick, right? How many people do you have, citizenry do you have that can fill the void and the gap? Now, for the record, the majority of us will recover from COVID-19. COVID-19 is not a death sentence for the majority of us. But there are people who've caught it before and will catch it again. It's called the breakthroughs. Vaccinated people are getting it, right? They're getting it again or for the first time. Then you have folks who have never gotten vaccinated are getting it. And based on what Dr. Nakia Forbes says is that the most people in the hospital, the only people in the hospital are folks not vaccinated. Fine. All of this is true. I get it. I have no problem with it. So if that's the case, every other first world country decides we're going to stop the tide because we have to make sure the healthcare facilities are going to be able to take care of our people. When the healthcare facilities are overrun and pleading for you to do something, they ain't saying stand out there and tell us about the values of a vaccine and the value of our neighbors and neighborly love and affection. They're telling you do something tangible. Not just all of a sudden we gonna do 18 beds. Not just all of a sudden we finally found that number for Samaritan's Purse because we didn't call them 3 weeks ago when 20 people were dead. Oh, no. They ain't asking you to show up today and talk about what you can do, what you're going to discover later. We're going to put in new technology. Let's omit hubcap. We're going to hire 40 people today. You just realized today, yesterday, this is what we needed, but I digress. Where I'm going with this is you could do something already. Make testing free, right? Because who benefits from free testing though? Like, let's come on now. You can tell people, you can tell all of us in government, you can tell all of us behemoths, we can't buy masks. You know how crazy it is if mask is the mandate. If I got to wear masks, you're telling me now I got to buy my mask from a local vendor when I could buy my mask in bulk? Oh, well, we making commerce. Most people ain't getting the made masks anymore. Who's benefiting from all of these things? You could do something, Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Competent Authority. Stop having folks come in. Stop having folks come in who are not tested. At minimum, just do that. Halt something, stop something, give the doctors a chance to catch themselves. Because at this point, our own leadership is fueling this pandemic. I said it. I said what I said. Call me what you want to call me. I said what I said. Fueling this pandemic. 5 immigration officers are out with COVID from LPIA. 5. How did they get it? And we're not testing the rest? We got to take a break. When we come back, let's switch gears. I tell you, we got to be some free Negroes up in here. Some free Bahamians, black, white. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Shout out Long Island. We've got to decide at some point that this ain't working. This is not working. All right? You're listening to the one mask. Y'all try to get an N95 mask. A box of 20 will cost you $100. Jesus, take the wheel. We'll be back right after this.
Enjoy an elevated mobile experience with BTC, giving you
unlimited talk for the best conversations, unlimited data for all your online fun,
and unlimited roaming to stay connected while overseas.
For just $50 per line.
Unlock unlimited mobile talk, data, and roaming when you sign up for BTC Superfast Fiber Internet. Speed starting at 100 megabits per second. Enjoy more great savings and value. Upgrade or sign up today. Visit any BTC store or btcbahamas.com. Conditions apply.
Do you know you can get your business cards designed and printed for as low as 18 cents a card? If it's a poster you want, you can pay as little as $6 a square foot. If your print needs are short or long run, digital printing, wide format, or print consultation, call the best. Call Print Masters. Print Masters' goal is to provide its clients with the highest level of personal, professional service at an affordable price. Our state-of-the-art technology also makes working together efficient and easy. Laminations, business cards, flyers, posters, window and floor decals are just a few of the digitized print services offered at Printmasters. Call 302-2361, 302-2361, or visit us at the Nassau Guardian Building in Oaksfield. Print with the best. Print with Printmasters.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
It's the hit back with Natasha Black. It's the hit back with Natasha Black. It's the hit back with Natasha Black. It's the hit back with Natasha Black.
And we're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Natasha Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Everyone, I hope you're, again, doing well. Take care of yourself, please. This thing is in the community. Be safe, be safe. However, with all of this going on, we still got all kinds of, like this, man, listen, this country, we need to be in prayer. If you are a person who believes in prayer, pray. Because I feel like only God can come in and restore some of the brokenness in this country. Because we still got some issues that are also unresolved. One of those issues now, I mean, really, I didn't see it coming. And I'm so happy we have the BPSU President with us. Because I didn't see it coming, y'all, that social service workers were vexed, right? And my good friend CA would say, vexed to ratted. But we've got Kimsley Ferguson joining us. Kimsley, welcome, my friend. How are you?
I am doing extremely well. Good afternoon, Nahaja. Good afternoon, Bahamas. It's indeed a pleasure to be on the Hit Back with you today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on, my friend. I'm happy that we got to do it and to get you on with us. Kimsley, man, I think we all saw day before yesterday. For me, I was surprised by, because I didn't realize what was going on as an undercurrent with social service workers, but we definitely know, and we've known that social service workers have not stopped working since Dorian. And when I say not stopped, you've been working before that, obviously, but the amount of pressure, the amount of demand that has been placed on social service workers since Dorian has been large and weighty. Tell us what's going on a bit about what are some of the issues and concerns that you guys are facing and want resolution for?
Well, there are a number of major issues in relation to social services and, to be honest with you, the entire public service. But everybody in relation to the regularization exercise, all the ministries would have submitted stuff on behalf of some of their employees, and certain communications were coming back to the various ministries that would have been issued to employees, indicating to them that they were made permanent and pensionable. But however, in my discussion with the Minister of the Public Service in relation to social services, he said to me that the Ministry of Social Services did not submit anything at all on behalf of their staff in relation to them being regularized. Prior to that, Nahaja, we would have had a meeting with the permanent secretary over there sometime, I think it's in about the last part of the year, somewhere thereabout. And the reasoning for that meeting was we wanted to get an update on the regularization exercise. Mm-hmm. However, in that meeting, we discovered that nothing was done at all in relation to the regularization exercise for the work program individuals who are actually temporary staff. During the course of that meeting, I had in my possession a circular from 2016 issued by Public Service to the various human resource departments, empowering them from 2016 now, empowering them to regularize individuals. Allocations were made financially to regularize individuals, but yet social services did absolutely nothing. That was record-setting day in my career as the president of the Bahamas Public Service Union, to know that a circular existed that empowered the various ministries to regularize individuals. Hence, persons at social services, some have already retired with no pension at all.
Wow. Okay, so what you're saying is, Kimsley, that the social service workers, they were feeling pretty confident because of this empowering, this document or circular that was saying, hey, you guys are going to be sorted out. What has been the word on why it didn't happen? Anything?
There was actually no response in regard to why it didn't happen. It was just, the response just was, it didn't happen. And I asked the question, can anybody tell me why? Nobody in the room or that was on Zoom at that time was able to say to the union why. It's extremely disappointing. And shortly thereafter, I would have met with the permanent secretary of social services, who indicated afterwards that a team was being put together to address this particular concern. I believe because the silly season is upon us, some people have the view that they can patronize us because they want some people to support them and all this sort of stuff. But let me tell you something. I'm not going to tell people what direction to go in with their political persuasion. But all I can say to them is, watch how some people are treating you.
All right. So then we're here now. What the main thing is, the main issues are the regularization of folks. Is that the main issue? That there are a lot of people not being made pensionable and permanent?
There is a promotion issue as well. I got to paint the picture for you. You have some persons who are temporary staff who have not been regularized, but they're carrying caseloads as if they were social workers, chief welfare officers, and these people are doing the work. So promotions are a concern. There's also the concern of the health and safety of those individuals over there, because these persons are expected during any natural disaster. Even now, we see the pandemic is upon us, and these persons are required to be there on the front line. There's also the concern of whether or not these people are going to be receiving any of the honorariums that are being given, because they are, in my view, are considered frontline individuals and essential workers.
No, listen, I say that there are a lot more folks are considered frontline and essential workers when they're forced to go back to work because the country's open. I think there's a lot of people who are frontline workers at this point, considering the extent of the pandemic itself. Let me ask you, how many persons right now are falling into that category of not being pensionable or permanent?
Nahaja, I would say a little over 300, somewhere about 350 persons thereabout.
Really?
Because social services is a really, really large ministry because it's all across the length and breadth of the Bahamas.
350 persons we're talking about. What's the timeline? How long, what would you say the average years on the job and not being made permanent?
We have persons who are work programmers at this point, some with 12, 15 years, even to about, say, 27, 28 years. Some of them already retired, like I indicated earlier.
Retired but never made permanent.
Retired but never made permanent, not receiving a pension. When I would have had this particular discourse with the Minister of the Public Service, he was concerned that persons who are currently at age 60 may not necessarily be considered for regularization. My response to him was, Mr. Minister, please, in the name of Jesus, you need to make those particular ones retroactive to ensure that these individuals receive a pension.
And you're looking at folks who, because you use the word retired, meaning that they've worked until retirement age. So you're talking about folks who've worked 20 years, 25 years.
I am talking about persons who would have reached the mandatory age of retirement and would have worked 25, 30 years. This is how long. And Nahaja, it's an indictment on the government of Bahamas to have exploited these individuals to such an extent. 26, 30, 31 years, and went home after having served their country, after having been in the trenches, after every hurricane or natural disaster, having to disregard themselves and their families and having to come out and serve the Bahamian public, but they went home with nothing.
So let me ask you, we're just tuning in, Kimsley Ferguson, President of the Bahamas Public Services Union. Let me ask you this, Kimsley. At this point, we are, because I one of the things that stresses me out or really concerns me is that we can do this to people, right? How does this affect wages if you're not pensionable permanent? Do they actually get the actual wage that should be there, that should be considered the standard if they're not permanent, or do they get part-timers wage?
These persons would have been receiving minimum wage, $210 per week. None of them were paid monthly. It's extremely disappointing. I become very passionate when I talk about things like this. Those individuals, they want a home. Some of them want a home. Some of them want to send their children to college. Some of them want to buy a car. These individuals cannot even go to the bank because the bankers are not even giving consideration to these individuals because they're not satisfied there's any job security in relation to these individuals. So again, $210 a week. And so they now have the choice of putting food on the table or paying the rent.
Okay, but these are $210 a week. Okay, I'm stuttering now, Kimsley. So you're saying though, and I have tons of questions even on that, these persons are hired as what?
They're called work programmers. Now, let me explain the program. Initially, these were persons that were hired who went to social services for assistance. And so they put together this program to assist the individuals, but it was something that really should have been temporary. And at some point, they should have severed their ties with the individuals until they actually caught themselves. But the program went on for up to now, which is some 30 years or even more.
Okay, sorry, I'm shook by that, right? So that's something that was over 30 years old. This work programmers program is that old of a program. These persons, now, when you say should have, was there anything in their contract that would have said to them after X amount of months, after X amount of years, you are now a permanent or can apply for permanency in your job? Was there any legal document that states that?
Initially, when the program began, all the individuals would have been given documentation that indicated what the terms and conditions of the relationship was. Mm-hmm. I cannot say for a fact that there was a time frame, but I know based on the program, it was supposed to have been a period of time to allow the individuals to gain some momentum, be able to take care of themselves, and then it was supposed to be severed. Contracts were signed a couple of times, and eventually there were no more contracts being issued. So persons then begin to have an expectancy that I'm now an employee. And at some point, consideration is going to be given to me as a permanent and pensionable individual. Because if we didn't want persons to have an expectancy, then we would have continued to put the contracts in place, causing them to understand that at any point in time when this particular contract is concluded, it is likely that ties between you and this particular program would be severed.
Kimsley Ferguson, President of the Bahamas Public Service Union. Hold that thought, Kimsley. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have more with the BPSU President. You're listening to The Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio, 96.9 FM.
In life, there are always challenges. Today, we find ourselves having to be more self-sufficient, socially aware, and technically savvy. At J.S. Johnson, we are committed to our customers by providing cost-effective insurance solutions. No matter what your insurance needs, we will always be here for you. Call 397-2100 or visit jsjohnson.com. J.S. Johnson Insurance Agents and Brokers, giving you peace of mind.
When I had got prostate cancer, my family didn't know if I was going to live at Cancer Treatment Centers of America. Within days, I got an appointment. They presented me with treatment options, and we set up a robotic prostatectomy. When my scans came back, there are no signs of cancer. They don't see you as a number, they see you as a part of the family. I'm going on with my life. That's a real gift.
Call us at Cancer Treatment Centers of America.
And we're back. Kimsley, the one and only Kimsley Ferguson, joining us on the show, president of the BPSU. Kimsley, we got tons of questions, text questions I want to get to with you. Nahaja, please ask, how were these temporary staff hired? What's the policy regarding hiring temporary staff in the public service? That's a good question. Some folks are saying, even in other texts and some of the other texts, that these are hires by, in political campaigning. We should have severed those ties long ago. But what is the process for hiring temporary staff?
Well, again, there are different types of contracts. You have bilateral contracts, you have unilateral contracts where I want a job, so whatever the terms and conditions are, I sign on the dotted line. Again, I indicated initially that this was a program put in place to assist persons who would have been making application to the Ministry of Social Services for assistance, whether it's housing assistance or some sort of family assistance, food assistance, whatever the case may have been. And while those contracts continued and they had their various terms and conditions, the concern that we have is they were not severed. If at some point the Ministry of Social Services had decided, okay, we're now going to sever from you. So I cannot say that there was anything political regarding it, but I think it was more so the government trying to assist individuals in relation to whatever the need was at that particular time.
All right, someone asks, can you ask Mr. Ferguson about the promotion exercise at the Ministry of Transport? All departments, transport all departments, and if he can look into it, please. No promotion letters have been given out, especially at the post office. And also someone else says, please tell Mr. Kimsley that the Department of Information Technology staff is also experiencing the same issue. These employees are stationed at the PM's office, and the permanent secretary has still not submitted any promotions for them either. These workers need their union leaders' help as well. You've got other groupings that are saying, Mr. Ferguson, come see about us. What is your response to them?
Okay, I think there were two persons from the Information Technology Office that would have come. I think it was probably about a month and a half ago, and they expressed the concern. Prior to that, we would have met with them initially when we would have taken office. I would have spoken with the permanent secretary that had responsibility for that section at that time. I think it would have been Ulysses Delancey, P.S. Ulysses Delancey, who were advised us that they were formulating a career path for that. At the same time, they were putting together this, what do we call it here? An assignment was given to digitize the entire public service. And so these persons would have been charged with responsibility for that. But we did have a discussion with her, and her response was that she was formulating a career path for those individuals, and it was not complete at that particular time. I haven't spoken to her recently to get an update on where information technologies career path is at this particular time, but we can follow up on that as well. I'll make a note even while we speak. The promotion exercise at the post office, that's being done. We are aware that there are some letters would have already been forwarded back to the Ministry of Transport, but from my understanding, they haven't been distributed yet. And so the promotion exercise, based on the update the minister gave me, it's ongoing. and it has been ongoing. The minister made a statement in the media that there was some $8 million allotted for promotions across the public service. So what you will see now is a lot of technical promotions taking place. And then the clerical side of those promotions are being done as well and will be distributed.
Kimsley Ferguson, president of the BPSU. So there are also some detractors with the union's work, Kimsley. There are some detractors. There are folks who are saying, listen, that a lot of this falls at your feet as president, that as your tenure, you know, do they feel as if they're feeling as if a lot hasn't been accomplished in your tenure? So why should they believe, and this is getting a lot of text messages and whatnot, where is their confidence, or where should their confidence come from that you can pull this through?
Well, let me say this, and I don't look for excuses at all, but quite a bit of this is stuff that has been inherited. And again, I can say quite a bit in that regard, but my attitude is not to complain about what my predecessor would have done. As the issues present themselves, we make every effort to present them with a view to coming back to the membership so that we can give them an update on where stuff is. Now, this the Bahamas and this the public service. And the attitude in the area of the public service, people drag their feet and they take forever to do things. But at the same time, I want to say to our membership, everything is a process. And so what we can do is we can collect ourselves if we are of the view that quite a bit of what we've presented to them, we haven't been in a position to get an update. We can collect ourselves and take a stand and make it known that this particular level of service is unacceptable to public servants, and we will take it no more. And so I want to say to all our members that are listening, together we can stand, undivided we would fall. Yes, the union has an obligation and a responsibility to address your concerns, but the union is not in control of the public service itself. And so once we present an issue that needs to be addressed, we follow up to try to get a response on your behalf so that we can come back to you and update you. But sometimes 9 times out of 10, when we speak to persons in the various ministries in relation to your issues, we're finding that they've placed things on the back burner. It's probably sitting in the in tray in their office where we left it the last time that we were there.
7 good days. That's what you gave the ministry to comply, or to I don't know if the word is to comply, but to address your concerns. Yeah.
Respond.
Yeah. To respond to your concerns. Have you heard anything from the ministry?
Well, you know, disappointingly enough, today I would have spoken to the Minister of Social Services. I sought to give him a call to see if I could have gotten a meeting with him to address the concerns at Social Services. The minister quite frankly said to me that I must go and do what it is I need to do, or what I think is best to do. I again asked him if I can get a meeting with him to have a discussion in this particular regard. He said to me that I spoke with his permanent secretary and she speaks for him.
So what is the next step now? So what you're getting from the minister is, and you're talking about the Minister of Social Services, yeah?
The Honorable Frankie Campbell, yes, ma'am. Now,
go ahead.
Yes. Nahaja, statements are going to be made. Statements are going to be made. I am not one that like to pass idle threats, but when we would have consulted with the membership after that time has elapsed, then some decisions in that regard will be made. Those decisions are going to be collective decisions. I think that this is a time when the Bahamian workforce, after being abused and mistreated and neglected for so long, they're coming together. And I want to commend the individuals at Social Services, along with all the other public servants, those at the Airport Authority, those at the Post Office, and other ministries that have issues that are outstanding and we are unable to get a resolve because the government of the Bahamas has been displaying a dismissive attitude. This morning, I would have written a communication to the Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, the Most Honorable Dr. Hubert Minnis, asking for an audience with him to discuss these very issues. I would like to know that we would have exhausted all avenues in seeking to get a resolve regarding the outstanding issues of public servants, so that when we have to take it up a notch, then we are satisfied that we would have done what it is we can do to get an amicable resolve.
Kimsley Ferguson, what do you say to those who say, listen, we're in a pandemic. Where do you think the government is going to get the money from?
Well, Nahaja, I'm happy that that question was asked because it's a silly season. And I would have noticed and taken a look at that gussie budget that the government would have put together. I've noticed as well in various constituencies, campaign promises are being fulfilled, or seeking to fulfill campaign promises. When the government needs money, they could find it from exactly where they want to find it from. And so now it's time for public servants to receive their due. We expect that you would go and look where you have the money and take care of public servants. I have in front of me communications that would have been forwarded to the Minister of the Public Service regarding the completion of the industrial agreement. We would have written in May 2020, the Prime Minister asking for an audience after we would have spoken with the Ministry of the Public Service and didn't get a response. We would have written the Public Service, the union's attorney, Khalil Parker, on the 3rd of March. I would have also written on the 11th of November 2020. I would have written them again on the 7th of May, and there are other communications that we would have given to the public service, and I don't have a response to either of these in relation to completion of the industrial agreement, which was given to public service before June of 2018 when it expired.
That's a common theme with all the unions right now, though.
Well, we started the negotiations. All the non-financial aspects of the agreement have been completed. Then came Hurricane Dorian. That was the first excuse. We sought to be understanding. Shortly thereafter, we wrote, the pandemic came. The excuse then was the pandemic. We wrote communications saying to the Minister of the Public Service, let us complete the negotiations, and if payments in this regard had to be deferred, then we can have a discussion about that and we can make a decision on when payment would be made.
Let me ask you something, Kimsley. Let me actually, before we go, because we have to go, and I want a quick answer from you on this. Someone texts, does your guest support contribution or contributory pension funds for public servants?
We do support that in the area of the various authorities and corporations that we represent, as well as is something that my predecessor, Mr. Pinder, would have been promoting for a while, because what it does, it allows public servants to get a larger size pension upon retirement. And so, yes, I am indeed in support of that.
And is that something that's in the new agreement that you're hoping to put in there?
Well, no, that is not something that we would have placed in our agreement at this particular time, but we are addressing that particular concern in relation to the authorities and corporations that we do represent, which is indeed mandated by the National Insurance Act.
Kimsley Ferguson, I hope we stay in touch as this process goes along. You said something interesting, steps will be taken, and we'll be tuning in to find out what those steps will be. Since there's no other recourse, the minister says, do what you got to do. Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping, Naja, that is the trade unionist in the minister speaking, because, you know, at some point the minister was actually the chairman of the Police Staff Association. And I would have I would have been of the view that he would have been really, really sensitive to the issues of the people at social services. And so we want to make a plea publicly again to the leader of the nation. Please sit with trade unions. Let us move away from dismissing the workers' representatives in this country, because we have some people that are keeping the wheels of this country turning, and nobody should be turning a blind eye to them.
Kimsley Ferguson, thank you so much, my friend. It's a pleasure. You're listening to The Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. We'll be back after that.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.
You're listening to the Guardian News Network. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Taylor Ferguson. Here's what's making news. Thank you for tuning in. In light of dwindling doses of the COVID-19 vaccine, officials cut the number of vaccines being administered at Loyola Hall today by 20%. According to Brent Simonet, who is a crowd volunteer at the only site administering the vaccine on New Providence, the vaccination team has had to be brutal in recent weeks as doses run low.
We have to be brutal about it, and some people are offended about it. If your appointment date is not today and you're traveling or whatever, we just cannot help you. Those are our instructions from the higher authorities. Some people don't like that. That's what I've been told, and that's what we do.
Royal Caribbean Cruise Line confirming 6 guests on board the Adventure of the Seas tested positive for COVID-19 during a routine check of all guests before returning to its home port in Nassau. According to a statement, 4 of the guests who are not traveling together are fully vaccinated, 3 being asymptomatic. 1 reportedly has mild symptoms. 2 of the guests are unvaccinated minors and are asymptomatic. The guests disembarked in Grand Bahama, according to the statement, and returned to their home country via private transportation. This is the second reported occurrence of positive COVID cases on board the ship since it began home porting in Nassau. As the country confirmed 132 new COVID-19 cases, opposition leader Philip Davis slamming the Prime Minister's national address, which he says revealed the Minister administration has no plan to address the current crisis.
Despite increasingly anguished pleas from our hospitals and medical professionals, the government has been slow to respond to the crisis. The Minister government never seems to have a plan. Instead of thoughtful and comprehensive preparation, they prefer to react and improvise. This is why we are facing a public health crisis without enough hospital beds, or nurses, or doctors, or vaccines, or public education.
And that's what's making news. I'm Taylor Ferguson. AP News is coming up next.
The loss of family members is very isolating, and people who have experienced loss appreciate when others have shared their grief. If you can't be there in person, go to the Nassau Guardian's website online at thenassauguardian.com and visit our obituary link. The Nassau Guardian's interactive obituary link allows you to read the funeral announcement, express condolences, or place photos on the online guest book for 1 full year. Losing a loved one is painful, but that pain isn't the worst thing to happen. Friends, loved ones, colleagues, and neighbors who ignore the loss compound the pain. Should the bereaved family wish to place the obituary and photos on our obituary site, just contact the Guardian's funeral industry partners or the Nassau Guardian. Remember, there isn't one magic right thing to say to someone experiencing loss that will make the loss less painful or easier to bear. The Nassau Guardian's obituary link, available online at thenassauguardian.com.
Delta variant. I'm Tim McGuire with an AP News Minute. CDC researchers studying a big COVID-19 outbreak in Massachusetts concluded even vaccinated people who got the breakthrough infections carried about the same viral load as those who didn't get the shots. Deputy White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says the variant spreads
more than twice as easily from one person to another. and it's spreading rapidly. It is really just across the country, and that is just the fact. 2 months ago, only 1% of COVID in the US were Delta. Now more than 80% are Delta.
The documents first obtained by the Washington Post also show that the vaccines are still highly effective against the Delta variant at preventing serious illness and death. The nearly $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill has passed another procedural vote in the Senate. Majority Leader Chuck Schumer keeping the Senate in session through the weekend and longer if need be in order to approve the measure. I'm Tim McGuire.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
It's the Hit Back with Natasha Black. It's the Hit Back with Natasha Black. It's the Hit Back with Natasha Black. It's the Hit Back with Natasha Black.
And we're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Natasha Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. It's good to be here today. As per usual, it's a good full show. I wanted to, before I have a wonderful guest coming on. If you guys haven't been keeping up, obviously we all know Monday's a holiday. I mean, you and your Grammy know Monday's a holiday. People, your pet dog knows Monday's a holiday. Monday better be a holiday because I'm really pushing hard for it to be. But anyways, so I got a good guest, a great guest. She's a friend of the show. Dr. Niambi Hall Campbell Dean will be joining us in just a quick second. But something that was just on the news, cruise ship passengers coming in positive. Now, I want y'all to understand something here. The cruise, how do we find out? The cruise ships are the ones testing, not us. Okay, just for the record. The cruise ships are the ones that are testing passengers, and then they get turned away. So that is the process there. So when we get this information, it's important that we know all of the details. But that is a process that we are not doing our own or not requiring it, but the cruise ships actually know the data and they're deciding on their own that this is the smart thing to do. Ain't that something? But we digress. I want to welcome to the show a friend of mine, someone I'm happy, I hope, we can say friend, brilliant Bahamian woman for sure. We're going to be talking a bit, and I want to switch gears. I think it's always important to discuss this, the movement, the Bahamian Emancipation movement, our movement to freedom. It's important because in history, I didn't know half of these things, and it gave me a new respect just for certain communities. And I hope these communities are well aware of their walk in history. So I've got to welcome a good friend of mine, Dr. Niambi Hall Campbell Dean. Doc, how are you?
Hi, Natasha. I'm good. It's good to be back.
Of course, it's good to have you back. Always a pleasure. So, Doc, of course, you and Chris Curry, Dr. Curry are my historians. You are, you, my dear, are my Nubian queen here on the history of the Bahamas, right? Let's talk about it. Why is our emancipation? Tell us a bit about our emancipation history.
Okay, well, I'm more the psychologist and Chris is the historian, so I do the best that I can.
I know.
So in 1834, the English-speaking Caribbean celebrated, or I guess recognized, the abolition of slavery within the region. Now, when we say that emancipation happened in 1834, we know that, on that day, it wasn't like, oh, okay, y'all are free. And now all of the enslaved people had these magical, wonderful, free lives and actually lived, and worked as free people. We know that in the Bahamas, there was a period after emancipation, which was the truck system. There was apprenticeship systems. So there were a lot of systems that came in after slavery that kind of kept up the same structure, right? You were no longer made to work for absolute free, but you still weren't necessarily functioning and operating as a fully free, emancipated person, fully in charge of their labor and the wages that they could occupy for that labor. So it's interesting that, we have this conversation after the union piece, because it shows that while, a lot of people argue that we're still not free in the Bahamas, and that's a argument that you could make, I think that we've come a very
long way.
Very long way. Yeah.
So then let's talk about it, because the movement itself, why do you think it would, obviously we know it was important. Obviously we know that it shaped our lives, and it's led for us to be in terms of economics, we're in the world and global geopolitics, we're considered a very stable, Black-led nation. We're stable. We're an economy that grows, though slowly, and maybe for a few, more so for the majority. But we are a thriving people, right? And a thriving country and nation. Emancipation for a lot of other nations may not look as good as ours. What do you say from the psychological perspective, the impact of our emancipation that has led us to where we are today? Your thoughts on that? What has changed in us? What has grown in us because of this?
As you were framing that question and asking, the quote came to my mind, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. And so I think that, one of the reasons that I wanted to come on the show and speak with you today is to talk about this, but also talk about the Bahamas National Reparations Committee and the events that we have planned for this month of emancipation, which we're calling Set Free Sundays. And one of the points of the Reparations Committee with CARICOM's 10-point reparations plan is psychological rehabilitation, right? Recognizing that, okay, we came out of a period of enslavement, but after 400 years of trauma, there were no psychologists on the sidelines saying, okay, I know that you experienced a lot. Why don't we come and unpack that, right?
That's true.
Nobody there to say that. And so we had 400 years of trauma of enslavement, followed by hundreds of years of the trauma of colonialization. And there was no space to recognize that these systems were meant to kill us, right? Really. I mean, I sometimes pause before I say that, but there's really no other way to say that. When you look at enslavement, it was cheaper to just go to Africa and get more than to treat the persons that you had in a way that they could live a longer life, right? It was just cheaper to work them to death and then get some more. So these systems weren't created they were created for our death. And there was no process in which we came out and said, how does that affect the way that I think, right? How does that affect the way that I interact with other people? How do I make connections with persons when I came from a history of people being able to be sold away from you, taken away from you, right? How does that work? And so all of these things affect our psychology. And all of these things, you may feel like, oh, and this is what I hear, that was so long ago, but was it really?
Yeah.
Really? Like my grandmother touched and knew people who were enslaved.
Wow.
My grandmother, right? So it's not really that far from our memory. It's not far from our psychological way of being and knowing. And we have to recognize that.
How does it, we did a show one time, colonialism and white supremacy, right? You and I and Dr. Curry did a show together. It was a huge hit, right? But it always touches on, heavy topics, right? Heavy topics. And I'm the one that believes that you cannot understand or know who you are today unless you look at your history. Why do we make decisions that we make today that are so considered the norm? Why do we feel the way we feel? Why do we do the things we do that are so normal? And I think you guys mentioned something a while back on that show in regard to that it is entrenched in us. So we don't know we're a part of a system because we don't wake up and say it's a system. Like it is what it is. It is, you don't see it. You might feel it, can't name it, but you don't see it. If you look back at that moment of emancipation, it's a word or a thing that happened. But like you mentioned, the mental side of it, can you look back as someone who, when you look through the conversation of reparations, ask yourself or come across any reasoning why, for many Black people, reparations makes no sense? Like I've heard a lot of Bahamians say, what are you talking about? Reparations. That makes no sense. Is there a reason why reparations makes no sense for a lot of us? Like a lot of Bahamians say that makes no sense.
I think a lot of people don't really subscribe to the reparations movement or get on board with it. I think because they don't really understand what reparations is about, right? Because once you break reparations down to justice, I don't understand how you could have a problem with it, right? I don't understand how you could say, oh no, you don't deserve justice. And who gets to determine what the timeline on justice is? Who gets to say, oh no, justice, what happened to you was too far long ago, so you don't deserve justice? When the people who perpetrated the injustice are still benefiting from the perpetration of that injustice, right? I think people also sometimes push back against reparations because they feel like it's an impossible thing. And they don't understand that reparations has happened before. Reparations is happening now. That the enslavers received reparations after emancipation for the loss of their property.
Mm-hmm.
The enslavers received reparations.
That's true. As from us, when folks decided that they were going to escape their slavers here, those slave owners were paid off, eh?
Yeah, and after emancipation, all of the slave owners that now did not have the property of the enslaved persons received money for the value of the enslaved persons that they had.
So they got reparations. Someone says, so who would pay those reparations for us if we're looking at it as the studies that you guys have come about? What is owed? Who would pay?
So I think one of the other things when we talk about reparations too is that kind of push people back is that the reparations is always perceived as money or a specific amount. But I would invite everyone to go to the CARICOM Reparations Commission page and look at the 10-point reparations plan. Because a little bit differently than reparations, how it's discussed in the United States, the CARICOM reparations movement focuses on the development of the region where, if you look at Walter Rodney's text, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, right? With the same argument, how England underdeveloped the Bahamas. When the colonizers left these areas, 60% of the people in the region were illiterate, right? So we were free, we were independent, but we couldn't read. So what
That stunted all of your development. Yeah, no, that's great. Hold that thought. Don't go anywhere. Hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Dr. Niambi Hall Campbell Dean. We're talking about emancipation, reparations on this Good Friday. We'll be back right after this.
Tired of banks forcing you to use technology to bank the way they want you to? Your convenience is important. So no matter what your banking needs, Commonwealth Bank's friendly staff are always available in branch for that personal one-on-one service. But when you choose technology, our online and mobile banking app offers you state-of-the-art functionality. The choice is yours. Commonwealth Bank. Bank the way you want.
The Water and Sewage Corporation advises customers and residents of Claridge Road that the corporation will commence improvement works beginning Wednesday, July 21st, 2021 to August 6, 2021 from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. daily. Customers should note that there may be some interruption in water supply during the works, and the motoring public should note that there may be some traffic diversions around the work area. The corporation apologizes for any inconvenience caused as they work to improve their level of service.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black.
And we're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Dr. Niambi Hall Campbell Dean joining us on the show. Doc, we're talking reparations and emancipation, right? Emancipation Day is coming up on Monday, and we celebrated the freeing of slaves here in the Bahamas, right? So that's our Emancipation Day, our big day. Woo! Thank God. Free Negro. So now, Doc, we were talking about reparations, who will pay, and, what was the two questions? Who will pay and why? No, yeah, something similar to that. What are your thoughts on that? When we talk about reparations, who will be the payer?
The payer would be the governments of the colonial powers, right? So in the Bahamas, that would be England, in Jamaica, England, in places like Haiti, France.
Jamaica too.
Yeah, Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados. When we think about who would pay, I think it helps to think, well, who has been paying? Haiti has been paying France. When did they just stop? Like maybe a few years ago?
Mm-hmm.
So
to be free. Ain't that some mess?
Right.
And they're still being ruined by these first world countries. Why is it? Sorry, I could go on my head just trying to figure out why the UN is policing Haiti. I'm sorry, but we digress.
Yeah, that's a whole.
Yeah.
But it's connected, right? It's connected because if we look at what's happening in Haiti, it's because they were the first ones to say we're going to be free, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our emancipation in 1834, theirs was the first Black republic in the world in 1804, right? And so when we talk about this thing called freedom, when we talk about emancipation, it's not, it came with a price. And so reparations is about saying we no longer want to pay that price.
That's interesting. Okay. So the price, what would you say would be the price that we have paid in the Bahamas? The price that we paid apart from slavery? Anything, and because you mentioned something like education, 60% of us were illiterate. Our ancestors were illiterate, right? And then England left and whoop, there it is. Well, they didn't leave, but we were free, right? So
they just left the responsibility now.
Yeah, that's it. Because they still weren't interested in education, because I think it wasn't until we had really free public education, until we had majority rule, and then governments changed and free public education came into play. But what do you say is the impact of that on the Bahamian society? And do you still see that impact today?
I think we still see that impact today in so many ways that we're not even, again, consciously aware of. If we just look at the system of education, for example, only education now, right? My parents are the first generation of Bahamians to really receive a secondary education.
Say it again.
My parents are the first generation of Bahamians to have full access to secondary education.
Yeah, that's true. We're not that far off. God knows it's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Access now. Access.
Yeah.
Not, this is that it was there and you could access, you could go.
Yeah.
Right? And this is secondary education that we're talking
You're right. I think my mother had to stop at 14. I think you go to work at 14. I never thought of that. That's deep.
You know, and that's one generation now. And I think that that's one of the things that we don't really appreciate, how, because in that generation, we've made such advances, right? Many of Bahamians have really excelled in the field of education and just taken it and run. So we feel like, oh, you know, high school, that's basic. Now everybody is going to the University of the Bahamas, you know, and that's considered the basic now. But the fact of the matter is, this is a new thing in our development as a nation. Education is a new thing in the development as a nation. And so how does that impact you, right? How do you build a government of people who are trying to govern a majority of people who are illiterate? So how do you govern? Right?
That's
what
right.
kind of things do you need to put in place? How much structure do you need to put in place? How much plans do you need to put in place when you know that your electorate is not going to be able to read or follow up with what you have, what you have there, right? What can you now do? What can you get away with?
Oh, and that's a big one.
Right?
What can you get away with? that's probably the only question they ask.
What are they going to require of you? Right? That's education. If we look at health, you know, Sir Hilary Beckles, who's the chairman of the Reparations Committee, talks about growing up in Barbados and walking to school with a bag of sugar on his arm and eating the sugar like a snack.
Yeah.
We have the highest rates of diabetes, the highest rates of hypertension. Our cancer rates are astronomical. We are, by all accounts, a very unhealthy people. Where does that stem from? What did we learn from our experiences about the ways that we interact with food and our land and eat, right? With salt, when we look at the conditions that were on the slave ships and the amount of salt that we were subjected to, right? All of these things, they play a role. And I think that it's just disingenuous for us to pretend like that doesn't matter. We here now. I ain't never been to Africa. I don't know what Africa have to do with me.
Yeah, that's common, eh? I ain't never been to Africa. I ain't trying to go to Africa. I'm barely African. I'm Bahamian.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you can think about Africa however you want. That still does not separate you from the history and the reality of what happened. And because we are so far removed from the reality of that history, we fail to see how it is impacting all of our systems now. And that's just enslavement. That doesn't even talk about colonialism, right? Why we, for some reason, think that the ice over there is colder than the ice right where we are. You know, I heard someone on the radio today talking about the price of strawberries and how the government needs to lower the price of strawberries because people need to eat healthy. And I'm like, but kidnapping the road, scornful. Why we have to eat strawberries?
Yeah.
Canap is a fruit.
Well, listen, we don't have any, but we don't have a label on our canaps, right? Our canaps don't have a label. They don't come in a package and tell you that I got X amount of calories. That's a deep point, though. Canaps is the fruit and it's scornful. They don't get a label on my dilly. I need a label on my dilly. But that's a good point. Keep going. Sorry, keep going.
No, these are all of the things, and when we think about the ways that we interact with ourselves, and we think about ourselves, that we don't consider, like in the child's lunchbox, you put in an apple. What about the hairy mango? What about the canap? What about the dilly? Right? I went somewhere and there were mangoes. The hairy mangoes were on the ground, just scornful, like the whole place scented of mangoes. They were just
mangoes and flies. Yeah.
Everywhere. And it's like people are hungry. People are looking for things to do. People can't find natural foods to eat, right? But it's because of our perception of what a fruit is. Right? Our perception of what healthy food is, right? I'm still trying to think of how I could use the almonds, that almond tree at UB just every year. I'm like, I have to figure something out.
That's deep. Okay, Doc, don't let's get this caller. We have a caller on the line. Caller, you're on the hit back. Welcome.
Good evening to you, Nahir, and your guest.
Good evening.
Listen, I think the lady mentioned something about salt.
Yeah.
Do you realize no Bahamian, and Nahash, I hope you don't have it in your home. I hope you don't got that Morton box with the lady with the umbrella in your home.
I would love to tell you no, but my sea salt on the way though. My Inagua salt on the way.
No Bahamian. You know what? When you see the billboard going to Accent, Crooked Island, Long Island, even Exuma, and Inagua with Morton salt. Why? And you could go up there and rake the salt. Fix it better because it has all the 92 minerals. There's no additive to it or anything like that. There's no silica, sodium dioxide, or anything inside of it.
You right?
Yeah. Good stuff. Are you there, caller? Okay, I guess that was it. But no, you made a great point there.
Yeah.
Why
that's such a great point. But the truth is, when you go to the food store, if you buy your sea salt in the food store, the sea salt, the price of it compared to that little blue box with the little girl and the umbrella on it.
Listen, every time.
Will make you want to pick up that little blue box.
Man, listen, you can get two of them. Sometimes you can get two of them other blue box. Well, don't have the little girl for like less than $2.
You can,
all
right? But it does take a commitment. It takes a commitment to say, well, what am I going to pay for? What am I going to support? What do I want to honor? With and do that with your paycheck.
Yeah, I think what it's going to be, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Dr. Niambi Hall Campbell Dean on the show with us, professor of psychology there at the University of the Bahamas. There's a lot of stuff. Said for slavery reparations, someone asks, how do you determine who should get what, and how would the amount be determined?
So again, the reparations model that the CARICOM Reparations Commission employs is not a model that focuses on a dollar amount, right? If you go and check out the 10-point reparations plan, it's a model that focuses on development and development in these 10 areas. So they include psychological rehabilitation, health, education. The first point on the plan is a full and formal apology. about repatriation to Africa, right? So it's not a specific dollar amount that is determined, and all of the people within the region would be would be able to benefit, right, from the development. Because then if it's not a specific dollar amount, then you don't have to say, oh, well, you get a check, but your Grammy wasn't really from here, so I don't know.
That's
You
right.
need to go somewhere else and get your check, right? So it alleviates that kind of minutia.
Doc, I know we have, one of the things that I look at, and you were talking just before, even with that question, when we have this idea of that is better than this, and I see it in our negotiations, right? I see it even when we do tourism, right? The Bahamian product itself is as if we're trying to go, we've always sold the sand and the sea and the sun, but we weren't selling the people and the culture, right? And Jamaica has been very astute in selling their culture, right? They've exported their culture. Reggae music is exported. Rastafarianism exported, right? So they've exported their culture, though they still have the colonial vestiges as well, just like we have. Why do you think we have not done so well in exporting our culture? We don't play Bahamian music downtown in our stores. We play R&B, we play hip hop, we play everything. We play soca even in our stores downtown. Man, listen, one time I heard Indian Bollywood music. I ain't even joking. But why is it that we can't, we don't push Bahamian music? What is it that you've seen? I mean, just in your psychological, analysis, why don't we? What is it about us as Bahamians?
I will say, because you started using the example of Jamaica, and anyone who's ever been to Jamaica knows that, like, from the moment you step off the plane, Jamaica.
That's it.
In your face. Culture. Like in the airport, they have like big posters of the history of Jamaica, who this one is, who that one is, who their national heroes are.
Can I say, I was told, Doc, just as a record, I was told that right before they watch a movie, I don't know if they still do it now, but I was told this some years ago from a Jamaican saying, listen, I was surprised when she said, I was surprised when I came to watch a movie, we didn't stand up to sing the national anthem. In Jamaica, we stand up to sing the national anthem. I was like, what? Who got time for that?
But for a movie.
For a movie, y'all running out. But that's interesting.
Yeah. And so I think that, in their development or their move and rise to independence, there was a very concerted effort on culture, right? And the arts, and the role and the importance that they played. And I think that in our development, we didn't necessarily place as much of an emphasis on the arts, right? On culture. And so now when it comes time for us to say, tourism, the hot new thing is culture. People want to go and know who the people are. Now we have to kind of like put it together, right?
It's not organic. I'll tell you that.
Right.
It's manufactured. Yeah.
Whereas every Bahamian child should be able to put that together because they've been taught it. It's been instituted. There's a school. There should be a school where we could go to for the arts and the artist development, right? We once used to have a thriving theater community, and I know that there are a lot of people that are still trying to, build that up. But it wasn't supported.
It's struggling, yeah, and that is where I think, our development, when I connected with tourism in terms of our growth outside of, colonialism or in that era, our development with tourism has really been, let's just service. We are selling sun, sand, and sea. Nobody come in here to see these people. They just want a new plantation, then an exotic plantation. And that's all we've done. Our model has been, we're the exotic plantation. And so people can buy a space on a key with their Confederate flag and we say nothing. Or a tourist could come and shoot up against the defense force and they don't even get arrested. They get sent back home, but we digress. Stay right there, Doc. We'll be back right after this. You're listening to The Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. We'll be
Enjoy an elevated mobile experience with BTC, giving you
unlimited talk for the best conversations, unlimited data for all your online fun,
and unlimited roaming to stay connected while overseas.
For just $50 per line.
Unlock unlimited mobile talk, data, and roaming when you sign up for BTC Superfast Fiber Internet with speed starting at 100 megabits per second. Enjoy more great savings and value. Upgrade or sign up today. Visit any BTC store or btcbahamas.com. Conditions apply.
When I got prostate cancer, my family didn't know if I was going to live at Cancer Treatment Centers of America. Within days, I got an appointment. They presented me with treatment options, and we set up a robotic prostatectomy. When my scans came back, there are no signs of cancer. They don't see you as a number, they see you as a part of the family. I'm going on with my life. That's a real gift.
Call us at Cancer Treatment Centers of America.
Loss of family members is very isolating, and people who have experienced loss appreciate when others have shared their grief. If you can't be there in person, go to the Nassau Guardian's website online at thenassauguardian.com and visit our obituary link. The Nassau Guardian's interactive obituary link allows you to read the funeral announcement, express condolences, or place photos on the online guest book for 1 full year. Losing a loved one, it's painful, but that pain isn't the worst thing to happen. Friends, loved ones, colleagues, and neighbors who ignore the loss compound the pain. Should the bereaved family wish to place the obituary and photos on our obituary site, just contact the Guardian's funeral industry partners or the Nassau Guardian. Remember, there isn't one magic right thing to say to someone experiencing loss that will make the loss less painful or easier to bear. The Nassau Guardian's obituary link, available online at thenassauguardian.com.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black.
And we're back. You're listening to The Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Joining me, Dr. Niambi Hall Campbell Dean, professor at the University of the Bahamas. Joining us, we're talking about a bit about the psychology of our emancipation and reparations, the impact of slavery on us as we look at the holiday coming up, our emancipation holiday as a nation. August 2nd, when was it? 1834. Powerful day. I'm happy for all of that and, all that good stuff, yada, yada. Yay! Woo! Free. Doc, I know there's an event which you were mentioning something, and so before I let you go, I want you to talk to us about what are you guys, what are some of the things that you guys are planning in planning for this time, this emancipation time?
Sure. So we're really excited, the Bahamas National Reparations Committee, and you can go on our website and find all of this information, Bahamas National Reparations Committee. But we're jumping off on Emancipation Day. We're going to have a screening of Judas and the Black Messiah. And
I haven't watched that yet, I have it. I haven't watched it yet.
It's a very interesting movie. People come out of it feeling a number of ways. So that's why we're going to definitely have a conversation about it afterwards, to talk about that. And, how did the Black liberation movement in the U.S. impact us here in the Bahamas? And that is actually going to be the precursor to our panel with the Vanguard Party. I don't know if you're familiar with, there was a socialist party called the Vanguard Party. And so we have some original members of that party that we're going to have a panel with them on August 15th to talk about their experiences. I think that would be really good, especially since we are approaching silly season, right? To just know about the history of other political movements in this country, that we haven't just always been a people that just talked about not democracy, but this type of social structure, that we've looked at others as well. On August 8th, keeping the history of Black liberation movements as our theme, we are going to be speaking with elders of the Rastafari movement.
Oh, nice.
Right? Yeah. So what was it like when Rastafari first started in the country? Who were some of the people that were responsible for that? And how did they help to develop and grow the movement? And then we're going to end the month on August 29th with a presentation by Andrew Wilson, who is doing a lot of work both here and in Africa to talk about, repatriation. So those are all of our presentations, but we're also really excited to be doing what we're calling the Emancipation Challenge with Ramble Bahamas. And so
I'm writing stuff down.
Yeah, we're going to have it set up so you can follow us. But Ramble Bahamas is a really interesting site that has highlighted a number of points of historical interest in the country. And so we just invite people to go throughout the month of August and take your selfies, but do it in front of a historical site, right? Do you know where the Walker's house is? Do you know where Marcus Garvey spoke when he came to New Providence? Do you know where Martin Luther King stayed when he was on the islands, right?
Oh, wow.
Points of, liberation. Do you know where the UNIA movement was housed in the Bahamas?
UNIA, what's that?
That's Marcus Garvey's political party, right? So there was a group of people in the Bahamas who followed Marcus Garvey and were like, hey, let's get on that Black Starship and go back.
I love that Black Starship.
Yes, the Black Starship, and go back. So there's so many different points and places of interest, from Lewis Street to Fowler Street to, the Southern Recreation Grounds. So go out and take your selfie. And we don't even want that to be limited to New Providence, right? All of these spaces in Cat Island, like the DeVoe Plantation, or, I'm sure there are places all over.
Dunmore Town and in Long Island. There's a lot of really great historical spaces.
So people, take your selfie in front of these spaces and share with us. Teach us about these points of liberation on your island, and let's get that challenge started.
I like that. Ramble Bahamas?
Yes.
That's pretty cool. Now, mind you, do I have to be vaccinated for these sites? I'm just kidding. It was just petty. I was just being petty. I was just being petty. I was just being petty, Doc. Dr. Niambi Hall Campbell Dean, it's always a pleasure to have you on. I learn something new every time. I appreciate you, Doc. Oh, before I let you go, I got one more question somebody wanted me to ask you. I just want to make sure I open this and get that question. Yes, slavery was meant to kill us. It was easier for them to get new slaves because it was our own who caused slavery to last so long. Please have your guest speak to that. Was it us that caused it to last so long?
I'm kind of confused about when you say it was us who caused it to last so long. I mean, that
our own people, yeah.
I think. So I think if the person is speaking from the standpoint of there were more enslaved people than there were enslavers, and people can argue that, if all the enslaved people were to get together, they could overrun the enslaver. So if that is the perspective that they're coming from, then I can understand how people, have that point of view. But I think it's really, I think it's really interesting when people now look back and say, well, why didn't they do this or why didn't they do that? When it's like, well, right now, why don't you say no to that?
Mm-hmm. And I think they were talking about the black slave owners.
Oh, well, I mean, when you look at the number of persons who were black and slave owners compared to the system of the transatlantic slave trade, I mean, it's not really comparable.
Mm-hmm.
So even if all of the black slave owners were to emancipate their slaves, slavery would still exist. So,
mm-hmm. So what's the what's your point on that? Someone says also how tribes in Africa sold their slaves to the white people, but we got to go. I would like for you. We'll do this again on this topic because, of course, I feel as if we always have to do these educational series and the impact of our history on our present behavior and how do we get to the destinations we want to get to in the future. Dr. Niambi Hall Campbell Dean, thank you so much.
Thank you, Naja.
You're listening to the Hit Back, everyone. So we have a full day, and special thanks to Dr. Hall Campbell Dean, who has always been a great friend of the show. The conversation on reparations will always be an interesting one. So today, news that came in, you heard the news on the show as well at our 5 o'clock news segment, was that we have, and it was in the USA Today, and I'm going to read that article to you, and I just got an interesting text as well, and I'll read that. 4 vaccinated adults, 2 unvaccinated children test positive for COVID on the Royal Caribbean ship, right? 6 passengers sailing on Royal Caribbean International Adventures of the Seas departed from Liane Sierra Caro, spokesperson for Royal Caribbean, confirmed to USA Today Friday, all American citizens. Now, there's something that you need to know, right? And let's say the test came back as part of a routine end of cruise testing, which is offered as a courtesy by the cruise line, since most passengers need to show proof of a negative test in order to return home. Travelers flying to the U.S. from international destinations are required to show proof of a negative COVID test or proof they recovered from the virus within the past 3 days, right? Now, past 3 months, sorry. So this is something that I want to bring up because something else came to my attention right before showtime. And it is a document that shows where immigration officials are told, and I'm going to put this up. I have to pull it up so that I can read it and make sure that I'm not getting the quotes wrong, right? And with regards to Adventure of the Seas, right? This is with regards to Adventure of the Seas. Guests boarding the ship in the Bahamas will not be subject to individual processing by an immigration officer upon the ship's re-entry to the Bahamas, right? Now, it goes on. This is for Adventure of the Seas. This is a circulating document within the Department of Immigration. This is said to immigration officials, right? The ship must notify immigration of any guests boarded the ship outside of the Bahamas. These guests will undergo the normal immigration protocols upon debarking or re-entry to the Bahamas. In these instances, passports will be presented to immigration for any guests that join the vessel outside of the Bahamas. The exception will be for private contractors who will board for emergency work. The guest must apply for a travel visa. Guests boarding the ship in the Bahamas. Now, guests who board the ship outside of the Bahamas. But guests who board the ship in the Bahamas will not be subject to individual processing by an immigration officer upon the ship's re-entry to the Bahamas. Okay, Nahaja, what's the problem with that? All right. Well, Adventure of the Seas, I think if we're sure, and my information is current to this point, it stops in Mexico. Yeah, it stops in Mexico, right? Ships go disembark and they go into Mexico and then they come back in and then they come back into the Bahamas. But immigration never sees these individuals and they don't have to come back and show any other health visa. Why is this important? Because that actually, we're now treating these guests who leave the country or make another stop in country as if they have stayed within the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Normal procedure is that once you've left the country, you come back and have to go through an immigration process. If you've ever been on any cruise that's had multiple stops outside of country, you start in the United States. When you come back into the United States, immigration got to see you anyway. So this is interesting, right? Because this is caught. Now, this whole situation with the four, with the guests who were tested positive, this was caught. And on top of that, immigration also gives them something no less than 30 days, right? So this includes guests disembarking. So passports will not require, and I need to show it where it says no less than 30 days. I actually missed that here. But they are given a pass of no less than 30 days as well in country. So roaming about in country you can do for 30 days. Where my issue arises with this is, one, anyone can go in a vessel, stop in Mexico, bring something on, never sees immigration, right? They can bring something on the vessel, come in country, never see immigration. I have a problem with that. They went out of country. We should stop and see them. But you have about a full 30 days, right? You can stay in country. What happens on the cruise ship, and I was glad that I got a chance to do this with Serenity, COVID protocols, like the article says, when you're leaving, the ship gives a courtesy where you can pay for your rapid antigen test or your PCR test and get it done on the ship. That's for those who are leaving right away. What happens to those who are staying, who have this 30-day, no less than 30-day pass to stay, right? Plus, there's a stop in Mexico. So you may have come on the vessel without COVID. You may have. But if you stopped in Mexico, how am I sure that you didn't get it there? But now you got a pass and you can stay a little longer. There's a lot of things that cause a little hiccup here, where you have to make sure these things make sense. So what happens to the guests who stay and don't take the courtesy, decide not to get tested then? What if they're staying in Ireland, which quite a few do? A lot more leave right away after their cruise, but quite a few do. These are the loopholes, ladies and gentlemen. So when the prime minister decides or says, well, we as Bahamians must pay for a PCR test to travel into Ireland, but they give the pass for guests on these cruise ships to not even see immigration after they've gone to another country within their voyage. And this is with Adventure of the Seas. The same vessel that has positive cases on it now. The same vessel. Where they will not be subject to individual processing by an immigration officer upon the ship's reentry to the Bahamas, regardless of the fact that they've gone out of country to a stop called Mexico. They're not required to show another health visa or just do another PCR test. No, but we know vaccinated people can, and this is what it's showing, 4 vaccinated adults, 2 children with positive cases. Cinema Nahaja, how did they catch it? They caught it because these are the few people, and this happened in the Bahamas, but USA Today sharing the story. What a time. What a time. What a time, I tell you. So everyone, please be safe. This COVID-19 is within country. Someone sent me a text message and I'm going to read it. Good day, Mrs. Black. I really thought when I voted for this government, things would get better, especially with a doctor at the helm. I really don't believe the prime minister really cares about us. He could have locked down to curb the spread of COVID. He could have suggested if you don't take the vaccine to build your immune system. He did nothing. I'm so disappointed. C'est la vie. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. Everyone, take care of yourself. We will see you next week, Tuesday. Enjoy your holiday, but be safe. Keep wearing your mask. Keep sanitizing. Don't be reckless. Let's just try to stay safe, everyone. And take your vitamins and minerals, all of that good stuff. See you next week. We're out.